Whoa, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to a very special episode of Teenagers, Toddlers, and Twins. I know that I already did one live episode this week, but I felt the need to do another. I'm here with my friend John Anthony. I know you've listened to some of our previously recorded podcasts, and we just decided to wing it and go live today. You're grinning. You're grinning. You look happy. Are you happy?
Well, yes, it's always better to be happy.
Excellent. So, what John and I normally do is I just kind of like bombard him with the topic. I don't give him any prep time. I like to see what he's thinking. For those of you that don't know, John has given a description about what he does, and he'll give another description here. But I'm going to give my own perception of it, if you will. So, John doesn't do well. John does do one-on-one sessions if you're interested. He offers one-on-one sessions, but he also where his program began and what it really specializes in is group therapy. So he's able to tackle, I don't want to say because we're anger management, good vibes, emotional calmness, not tackle, but he's able to juggle a lot of emotions, personalities, people, situations, all at the same time. So that's why I love working with John. One of the reasons I love working with John. And you're going to be hearing from me in a few seconds about what I wanted to talk about with John today. So when people, in my opinion, and we can ask my mom about this at another date or at a later date, but when people seek out therapy, I think it's safe to say they often have a goal in mind. Would you agree, John? Like there's a reason they're there, something has happened, they want to work on something to get better or find some tools, something like that. Would you agree?
Okay, yeah.
And I would say that for some of your participants in the group, it's I don't want to say forced, but it's heavily suggested that they participate in your groups. So you have the the task of working with people who may need to dig a little bit deeper and find themselves, right?
Well, what I'm really doing is teaching people skills or tools. It's not therapy, but it's therapeutic when they
Right.
learn the tools. And the tools are about emotional healing. Um, and the tools are about learning how to identify our feelings and then how we can process them in a way that we are going to be working through things and coming from our love of what we want, as opposed to coming from our fear and having the things seemingly working through me, like they're controlling me. We let circumstances, situations, other people, we give them power, and we don't even realize that we're doing it, to dictate what I'm going to do, because I react to people rather than respond. And so I teach people how to respond to incidents or traumas that they experience, so that they are identifying their fears, what they're fearful of losing, what they're fearful of not getting. It's not physical safety fear.
Right.
And then what they need to do to bring love from themselves to themselves, in the form of the acronym RUA-CAT, where the R stands for respect, the U for understanding, acceptance, caring, appreciation, and trust. So it's about being mindful of our thinking, to see the role that it plays in our feelings, our attitude, and then the experiences that we're having right now.
So here's why I brought up your group and the process, because I'm somebody who went through it myself at a very young age, 19, 20, and here we are 13 years later, I think, and I still believe in your program, and I say it all the time. But one thing I witnessed in your groups, if you will, is that, and I talk about this all the time on other podcasts with you, is that you are very good at helping people realize that there might be something a little bit deeper going on, right? Something they didn't even realize. So I wanted to talk about learned behavior with you. So I'm a parent, and I'm going through some things with my oldest teenager right now, and now I'm kind of at that point that I always feared I would be at, which is where I'm at that point where in parenting where I'm somewhat intimidated by my teenager, if you will. I don't want to, say the wrong thing. I don't want to do something to appease her and maybe it has a negative effect. You know what I mean? I'm really doing that balancing act right now. So I'm thinking to myself while I'm thinking about how I want to parent and how I'm parenting, and what I may want to do next. You know, my oldest, Alexis, who I'm referring to, she was born when I was 16 years old. Her mom was 16 as well, and I was still very young. Right? I'll tell anybody right now that I don't think we're adults until we're mid 20s, even a little bit later. Right? So she had to watch me learn about myself, right? She had to watch me learn about my emotions. She had to watch me go through, relationships that I thought would work out, that I thought were going to be long term, and ultimately they weren't. And now I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, did I do something wrong along the way? Right? I was just trying to parent the best I knew how, and like I said, I was learning about myself as well. So, in your experience, and we're not going to give any names or anything like that, how often are you working with people and you find out that what their parents did played a part in who they are today and how they behave? Now, I'm not, necessarily talking about abuse or drug abuse or verbal abuse or anything like that. Maybe it was just, dad was buried in work or mom was buried in work. Maybe they got divorced. Maybe it was an ugly divorce. How often do you find that the way mom and dad parented, or aunt and uncle parented, or grandma and grandma parented, affects the long term psyche and what we do in life?
Um, in every instant, you know, our parents have a tremendous influence on us. That parents don't realize the influence that they have, and we don't really comprehend the influence they're having on us. But they give us love. They don't give us love. They create structure. They don't create structure. All these things that parents do um, influences the child, and that's why it's so important to understand that. And I think that rather than being in my fear that I'm going to do something to screw them up, um, I have to be in my trust that I'm doing the best that I can. And I may have done things that cause them to learn something the hard way or cause me to learn the hard way, but I was doing the best that I can. Years ago, I went to this forum, thing called the Forum with Landmark Education. And it was a Friday night, all day Saturday, Sunday workshop where you're there all day, with 100 or more people. And what I found was, what they were trying to point out is that somehow, some way, regardless of who you are as a parent, you're going to do something that is going to screw up your child's life according to your child. Because the child has an agenda or a script of, who they want you to be, and parents often have the script of who they want their child to be, and these scripts don't match. And so as you're trying to work them out, you have situations that are in harmony, and then other things where there's conflict and things clash. And we all go through life wanting things, and we get caught up in trying to want them from other people. And what I do is help people to learn how to give them to themselves rather than trying to get them from other people. And the things that we want is the love, the respect, the understanding, the acceptance, the caring, the appreciation, and trust. When we have those 6 kinds of love in our life, we're going to be feeling happy, we're going to be content. When we don't have that, then we're going to be in our fear, which is the absence of love. And then we're going to try to get somebody else to turn the light on, so to speak, the love light, when it's really me that has to be mindful of whether I have my light on or I have it off, whether I'm allowing other people to turn it off for me because I'm giving them the power and I don't even realize it, and what I need to do to take that power back so that I'm not going to be reacting to people. I'm going to be able to respond.
Great. So I want to start kind of back, or touch on childhood, if you will. Not necessarily my childhood, but I read the the book It's called The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger. And for those of you who don't know, Bob Iger was the former CEO of Disney. He has been replaced by Bob Chapek, but that's because Bob Iger stepped down. Different podcast, different topic. But as you can tell, Bob has just been extremely successful in his career and life, right? Being the CEO of Disney, making a lot of beautiful acquisitions. Before Disney, he was the president of ABC. And in the first chapter, he talks about how his dad suffered from bipolar disorder, very, very bad bipolar disorder. His dad was extremely intelligent, extremely involved in politics. He talks about how his dad lost his job at one point because he attended a rally in Washington, D.C. His dad was very passionate about what he believed in, and he felt the need to do whatever he needed to do to express that. And Bob talks about how his parents were always worried about money, right? Because his dad was losing his job or switching jobs. How his dad was worried about, just various things that parents worry about. And if you're listening and you're a parent, you never stop worrying, right? Whether it be about money, whether it be about organization, whether it be like, did you forget something? When the kids get older, are they going to be home on time? Are they going to be home safely? All those things. And we hope that we prepared them for success. Now, backing up to what I was saying about Bob Iger, he says that what he experienced with his parents created the opposite effect, where he could have all these things going wrong in his position, in his company, and he doesn't let them bother him. Like he like me when I was in my senior management position back in New York, the first thing I did when I got up was check my emails because I was afraid that something happened overnight or I wouldn't be involved in something. Bob has a rule that he gets up and works out and doesn't look at his email before he does his workout. That has to be his time. He has to get his mind right, and I respect that, especially when you're the CEO of such a big company. So have you seen that happen where life was chaotic growing up, and things just didn't go right? And mom and dad had the best intentions, but in some cases they put their priorities first. And the end result was somebody who was very successful in many ways and maybe even the opposite of what their parents were.
Well, yeah, because we have a choice as to how we respond to what our parents are showing us. But all parents are teaching their kids all the time. Sometimes we're teaching them the things to do, and sometimes we're teaching them the things not to do. And so it's not uncommon for somebody who grew up with an alcoholic parent who stays away from alcohol because they saw how it had an influence on their parent or parents, and they don't want it to have that power over them. And so there's all kinds of things that we take. We have the ability to perceive life how we perceive it, and things we make things have meaning, and sometimes we see things, and sometimes we don't even see it. It just, oh, did he say that? I didn't even hear it, or I didn't even see that. Because we're looking at something else, and we're just have a different perception of what's going on. And see, the thing is that how we perceive life has a lot to do with our experiences from the past, our successes and our emotional wounds. And so my parents grew up during the Depression. And so money was scarce, and you save things, you didn't throw things away. So I save things. You never know, you might need that. But it may also be because of just who I am, as a person too, and I just happen to key in on that particular element that they were showing me, and that dynamic. And so that's what makes life so interesting. We're constantly influenced.
Right.
That's why they say there's the environmental influences as well as the genetic influences that make up who we are. And when a tree grows on the top of a mountain pass, and the wind is blowing in one direction all the time, that genetically that tree has the ability to send its branches out in all different directions. But because the wind is always blowing at a high speed in one direction, it can't put, the limb that starts out as a little shoot gets pushed back the other way. And so, I've seen, mountain passes in Colorado where all the tree's branches are on one side of the tree, because the wind is so strong and so constant that that's the only direction that it can grow securely. And life is like that for us. The experiences that we go through teach us things, and they teach us what to do sometimes and what not to do at other times.
No, I completely agree with that. And I'm going to kind of use what you just said about life teaching us and things like that. What you and I spoke when I was in your group, I want to say I was like 20, 21. So I was revisiting your group. And I was kind of at this point in my life where I had failed out of college 3 times, right? I was still very in love with mixed martial arts and things of that nature. And oh, I see we have a question. Going to get to
Mm-hmm.
that. Going to get to that in just one second, Tony. Absolutely, brother. Um, and I still didn't feel like I had found my way, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I had visited my friend at the time in Texas, and I loved it. Thought the weather was great, and the economy was good down there. And this was like 2007, 2008, when everything had kind of gone downhill for the economy. And I just it was the happiest I had been in a long time. And I remember telling you like I'm thinking about moving down to Texas, right? Alexis was young, it wouldn't have worked out custody wise. And I remember you told me home is what you make of it. And I was very impressed by your answer because there was no judgment, what we do in your group and with the tools as we look to find happiness. But how do we kind of tackle that challenge, if you will? Mom deserves to be happy. Dad deserves to be happy. Whoever the caretaker is has to be happy and do what they want to do. I'm sorry, maybe not what they want to do, but do they want to be happy and be able to juggle everything? Is there a limit? Where's the limit? What do we do with that?
Well, I think that's a personal decision. However, what I believe is that when we have children, we no longer have our own life. Those children need us, especially when they're very small. And so we may want to do things that we did before we had children, but it's not always easy to do that. And if we neglect our children and don't give them the emotional needs, the attention, the interaction, then they suffer because they make everything be about them, which is a normal part of the development. And they think there's something wrong with me, that my mom or my dad, isn't in my life or isn't spending time with me or doesn't have time for me. And, this is how things start. And then we create a belief about ourselves. And, a lot of people have that belief that they're not lovable. And they are going through life trying to prove that they're lovable. And they're trying to make other people validate that they're lovable, when the real thing is that I need to know that I'm lovable to myself and by myself. So I'm comfortable with me. Then if you love me, great. And if you don't love me, great. It's okay. There's other people out there that I can interact with or be friends with. So,
Yeah. And it's kind of like, and it can be, you can see the residual effects, right? Maybe mom or dad or whoever kind of did their own thing and stepped away from a bit, comes back a few years later, maybe not even a few years, a few weeks later, a few months later, whatever. And they kind of scratch that itch, if you will, figured out what they wanted to do, or figured out that what they thought might work out didn't work out. And they want to try to reconcile. It's possible, right? But you have to, it's not going to happen overnight, and you can't ignore that it happened. That's kind of my take on it sometimes, if you will.
Yeah, well, reconciliation is something that most kids want for their parents to do if they're separated. But it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes people take paths that there's no turning back now, because they took a path that sends them in a different direction. So like a new relationship that they're committed to. And, but you can still be civil to each other and, give each other the "are your cat," the respect, the understanding, the acceptance, caring, appreciation, and trust that, they deserve and that we deserve. So
Yeah,
I see,
definitely.
I see the question that Tony is asking about the
Right.
effects that the pandemic has on us, and certainly it's going to have an impact on us, and how it's going to be really depends on how we choose to respond to it. It doesn't have to be a negative doom and gloom situation. Um, so, Dr. Sandra Bloom, who's a noted psychiatrist in the Philadelphia area for many years, she wrote a book called Creating Sanctuary years ago.
Hmm.
And in that book, she said that you could have two people going through similar challenges and traumas, and one person is going to be able to get through it and rise above it, and the other person is going to get taken down by it. And the the variables that determine if a person's successful and works through it versus getting taken down by it is the degree to which they have the ability to give themselves internal support and the extent to which they have external support, other people that are there for them. The person who has the external support and can give themselves internal support is going to be able to work through challenges better. The person that doesn't have any external support or the ability to give themselves internal support is going to have a tougher time with that challenge. And so, and it's going to affect us emotionally because of what we're thinking about what we're going through. And that's why what we teach is how it's very important to pay attention to our thoughts. Am I coming from the love of what I want to happen here? Or am I coming from the fear of what I don't want? Because if I'm having negative, fearful thoughts, I'm going to be creating negative, fearful feelings in me that are going to feel real, even though what I'm fantasizing about hasn't happened yet or may never happen. And then it's going to cause a negative, fearful attitude. And then I'm going to be creating a new negative, fearful experience right now because of the direction that my thoughts are taking. So it's emotional wounds from the past that often influence us to have those negative fantasies. And if we don't heal those past wounds, then we're going to be vulnerable to think, oh, here it comes again. This is going to happen again. And then we're scaring ourselves, and then we're actually helping more to create it than to not create it. So that's why we need to heal those past wounds. And then we need to focus on what we want, coming from the love of what I want. And when I'm doing that, now I'm having positive, loving thoughts. That's going to cause me to have positive, loving feelings, a positive, loving attitude, and then a positive, loving experience. I can create either one. So why not create what I want or help to create what I want as opposed to helping to create what I don't want?
Right. And to add to what you just said, as somebody who is or has been raising children of various ages through this pandemic, to touch on what you said and to maybe bring some insight to what Tony was asking, I found that a big part of it is communication. Right. I've always found, and this is just what works for me, is that being open with our children about what's going on and not really trying to hide it and communicating throughout works as well. So, we had to explain to Jade when she went back to school, like, all right, this is we got to wear a mask. This is why we have to wear a mask. I remember that we took her to Target and a few other places first, to get her in the mindset that we had to put our mask on before we go into somewhere. And listen, I wear my mask. I'm vaccinated. I hate the mask. I think everybody else hates the mask. And, we're all ready for it to just end, and we're all ready for life to get back to normal. And I believe it will. And yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further with the whole pandemic and things of that nature. There was a point, there was like a week or 2 weeks where I really felt like somebody was sitting on my chest. I didn't know what was going to happen with work. Things weren't lined up in Philly yet with my job, and I was going for walks every day. And I found that when I went on those walks and enjoyed the weather because it was summertime, or even enjoyed the rain if it was raining, I made the walks a priority, and I found that my mind was my thoughts were getting away from the negative thoughts and I was feeling better. And, that's what worked for me. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if anybody focuses on the negative side of anything, that's all you're going to think about, right? That's all you're going to see is you're just going to be like, well, this is what's going to happen if this keeps happening. But we're not there yet, right? I know it's been a long pandemic, right? It's felt like 10 years, but I do believe things are getting better. And, that's just the mindset that I keep. And I choose not to worry about it. I just choose to do what I can in the moment. And, not to do a ton of promoting here, but that's what I get from John Anthony and his program is the tools. Because if I focus on the negative, then even if it doesn't happen, I wasted all that time and energy focusing on something negative that didn't happen. And if it does happen, then I have to address it head on and maneuver and do what I can to address the situation.
Well, yeah, and what you're really alluding to is the ability to stay in the moment, in the present, in the now. This is the only time that we can do anything about anything. I can think what I'm going to do in 5 minutes, but something else could happen and I don't even get to do that. And unfortunately, when we have trauma from the past that we haven't healed, there's the anticipation that something similar is going to happen again in the future. And so we're spending time in the past or in the future instead of being in the present. And it's hard to not have a negative fantasy if I have past wounds that were hurtful that I haven't healed, that I haven't moved through the 4 dimensions of healing that I, use from John Gray. What the first one is what's now always will be. Things are never going to change. I can't control anything. And then the next one is, seeing that there is a cause and an effect, and that becomes cause for another effect, and that things do change. They're not going to always be this way. But then that's where we have a tendency to blame. Well, if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have done that. If you were different, I'd have been different. And if if you talked nicer to me, I'd have talked nicer to you. And the first and second dimension are still where we give our power away, because either the person I'm blaming has all the power, or the whole world has power and I don't have any. So we don't want to stay in either of those. We want to move past them. And so to move past the blaming, I need to find the feelings that come before the anger, the fears, the shames, the sadnesses, and see them for what they are, an area in my life where what is missing is love from me to me. Because when we're blaming somebody, we're blaming them that when they did what they did, they weren't respecting me, or they weren't understanding or accepting me, or caring, appreciating, or trusting me. And maybe they weren't. But what we don't see at that same time is I wasn't doing any of that for me either. I was sitting there waiting for somebody else to turn the light on. I didn't reach for the light switch and turn the light on. And when we see that, then we start to have power over ourselves. So when we find all the things that we're blaming somebody for, and then we find those feelings, and then we give ourselves the "Are you a cat?" that we wanted from them, now I have that love in my life. And then I'm going to better able to move to the third dimension where I take responsibility for my part. What did I do to cause this problem between us? What am I doing that's making this not work? And I can change what I'm doing. I can't change what other people are doing, but we try to change all the time. We get into power struggles, trying to make other people be who we want them to be so that I'm going to be happy, as opposed to just making sure that I'm being who I am and let them be who they are and enjoy them for what they offer, not what I want that they're not giving me. And when we're able to accept people that way, then they are going to feel more comfortable. They can just be themselves. And when I'm accepted that way with that person, by that person, then I can feel more comfortable that I'm going to be accepted by them. And, we need other people, but we need to be there for ourselves too. And that's, and once we're in that third dimension, then we can forgive others that we were blaming for not being there, and forgive ourselves for anything we did or didn't do. And then it makes us available for the fourth dimension of emotional healing, according to John Gray, which is everything happens for a good reason.
So let me ask you something real quick. I'm sorry. I want to use Tony's question to come back to what we started talking about, which was learned behavior. So this is a very very broad question, so I don't expect you to answer for every single person on this planet. Are our children going to remember how we reacted during this pandemic, this election, about the vaccine, if we behaved immaturely, if we said things in front of them? That's one thing that I always worry about, and I think it's a big thing that parents don't realize. And I learned this through parenting myself. My I was watching a TV show, just to bring some comedy to the podcast real quick. I was watching this TV show, Kingdom. Great show if you want to watch it before it's not on Netflix anymore. Jade was playing with her toys. I'm reclined. I'm enjoying myself while the boys are sleeping. She's playing with her toys, and the gym owner and the fighter get into a fist fight, and the gym owner says, "Come on, fucker." Next thing I know, Jade goes, "Come on, fucker." Not even looking, right? She's not even looking at the TV. But, I was reminded that like kids hear and realize everything that's going on. And I really don't think they get enough credit, children. 2 years old, 3 years old, like they hear and learn everything. So, again, broad question: will our children remember how we reacted to this pandemic, this election, and everything else that happened in the longest year in the history of everything, the year 2020?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. How's that for direct answer? See, it all depends. See, the things that we remember are oftentimes the things that are at different ends of the spectrum. The things that we are really happy about, or the things that we are really scared about. And so they make an impact on us. And we're wired that way so that we can protect ourselves from those scary things in the future, and that we can recreate those good things in the future, based on that experience. So there are going to be some kids that are going to be, it's no big deal because of, they don't know, especially a young child doesn't know that you weren't walking around with masks. All they know is the experience of what they're going through. And if we, it's all in what we make the experience. And if we're looking at what we can't do anymore and what we don't have, then it's going to be a real challenge for us. But if we're able to look at what we're still able to do and what I'm grateful for, then it's going to have a different impact on me. And, I don't enjoy wearing a mask, but I like the fact of knowing that I am contributing to lessening the spread of a disease and or catching it. And I'm willing to do that part because it allows me to go to stores. It allows me to go get a haircut. It allows me to do things that for a while there, when things first shut down, that we couldn't do because we didn't know just how easy it was to contract the virus. And so, we're finding things out, so 6 feet, masks, helps us to be safe. Washing your hands, staying away from enclosed areas with large groups of people, all those things, help us to be able to manage through this pandemic. And, it's similar, except longer, through like a blizzard. A blizzard changes your life for that day or two, or however long it's snowing. And then however long the snow is there, as you have to deal with it. And you can curse it and you can hate it, or you can learn how to survive with it. Both are free choices that we have.
Or you can dig your way out of it.
Yeah. And so, it's the same thing with anything in life. We have a choice to see what is there for us to learn and benefit from, or to see how it's not like it used to be, and then hate it and resent it. And some people do that on a yearly basis when the seasons change. Some people, curse the cold. Some people curse the heat. And some people curse the rain. Other
Right.
people pray for rain. Um, and, it's all there for us as we choose to interpret it. And if we look at what we don't have, like you said earlier, that's all we're going to see is what we don't have. If we look at what we have, then we're going to see the abundance of the things that we do have, even though what we have now is limited compared to what we used to have.
Right. So I'm going to swing back to kind of away from the pandemic and everything that happened and is still happening, and get kind of back to what we were talking about: learned behavior, parenting, or parents rather, or guardians, whoever is taking care of us, helping us grow up, become an adult and independent, and the effects that what they do, say, didn't do, say, or do, or did rather. So is it a are we able to come back from the trauma, or will we have blips, hiccups, even after we hopefully start to work on things with whoever that guardian or that parent was? If we have an issue, is it possible to reconcile and build a better future? And should we shy away from that? Because I think one of the things that most people have, me being one of them, was that I was afraid to face the fear. That happened so long ago, right? I just need to move on and forget about it, right? But what I didn't realize until I started working more in depth with you one on one was that, like, I got to address this. I need to address this. And then I also found, at least on my end, that once I started addressing things, even though I couldn't change what had happened, I could start making things better. And I think you and I talked about this during one of our groups or during one of our podcasts or something of that nature, is that, after working with you, I make it a point in life that every day I want to know that, heaven forbid something happened, I'm good with everybody in my circle, right? There was no arguments, there was no blips. And I'm sure there might be some people listening who know that, them and I, we have some things to work on and we haven't yet. And, hopefully we do. But, I make it a point to make sure that I'm good with everybody, because I don't want there to be any trauma if something happens. So again, I'm sorry I got off topic. Can we reconcile? What does that look like? And what's life like after we deal with the trauma?
Well, I would answer yes, it is possible. I believe that there isn't any emotional wound that can't be healed. But there may be certain types of wounds that I have that I'm having difficulty healing, not because it's an unhealable situation, but because I'm not able to do the work that I need to do to find the fears, what I'm afraid of losing or not getting, and then what I need to do to bring love from me to me around that situation. And when I'm able to do that, then I'm going to be able to process through it. But if I'm not able to do that, then it's going to, it's going to be like an anchor or, baggage, that I have to carry around because I'm choosing to not deal with it. Now, you said before about, try to put it, I'm not going to think about it. But see, that's a coping style that we create as a child with a childlike brain that can only do so much. And so the numbing out, distracting ourselves, resorting to addictions. And addictions don't have to just be drugs or alcohol. It could be food, sleep, sex, TV, anything like that. Or we turn it to anger at others or ourselves. Those are some common ways that we try to avoid our emotional pain. But none of those that I just mentioned heal our pain. I don't care how much you distract, how much you numb out, how much you use for addictions, how angry you get at whoever, yourself, others.
I'd
None
like to
of
say
that
one real quick, and
heals
then I'll
our
let you go
pain.
on. I'm sorry. One thing that I thought I had was using to keep things under control was working out. Doesn't matter how much you run, how much you lift, how much you kickbox, and you hit that bag, and you're like, I'm good, I'm good. That's so temporary in one of those things, and I think that's something that people forget. I see it in a lot of fitness groups. They say that the workout is therapy, and it is to a point, but I think if you can't deal with things, then you need to see somebody like you. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to throw that one in there because I know a lot of people think that it makes everything perfect, and I can speak from experience. In some cases, it doesn't. So I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I think that's an important one that gets neglected in the addiction
Well,
column.
Yeah, well, exercise is a very good thing to do. Working out is a very good thing to do. And when you build up the cardiovascular system, your heart is pumping blood more efficiently. That means you get more blood to the brain more efficiently, and you're able to think more efficiently. And so it's a good thing. But what we're telling ourselves is a lot to do with where we are, what we're making us mean to ourselves and the world has a lot to do with why we're feeling whatever it is that we're feeling, positive or negative. And if I don't learn to take responsibility for it, then I'm going to be letting things control me instead of me learning how to process through the incidents and traumas that we all are going to experience in our life. I need to put my battery in.
John needs to put his phone on his battery, or no, the laptop on the charger before it dies. I make that. Well, I don't have that problem because I have a desktop. I know a lot of people like laptops. I do have a laptop, and yes, sometimes you look up and you're like, "Whoa, this thing's about to die." So, John is working from his laptop. He's just going to strap it on the charger real quick. By the way, I know that you said you're glad that you can wear your mask and get a haircut. Your hair looks great.
Well, actually, I need one. I went to get one yesterday, and the person that I go to was in a different shop. So Sunday's the next day. But, thank you. But it just needs, the back is what's really needing it. But anyway, that's getting off what we're here for.
Well, no. Anyway, your hair looks good. Everything looks good. So, as we get towards the end of this first live episode, hopefully, many more to come, and I'll definitely be recording with John in the future. I love recording with John. I love his insight. It's very different. I feel like it's very unique. So to the parent who may be questioning if they're doing things right? Because maybe they grew up in a traumatic situation. Maybe they just had one very traumatic incident that they didn't address. What's your advice to them right now, or in general? Like, what can you do to, one, in my opinion, acknowledge it? Because I think sometimes we don't realize it, right? And then two, what would your suggestion be to address it? Whether it be therapy or working with you, group counseling, reaching out to that person, sending an email or a note, calling them. What's your advice?
Well, we're all going to make mistakes, and that includes me. The trick, though, is to learn from that mistake the first time we make it, rather than ignoring the mistake, denying the mistake, and then keep repeating it again and again and again. And, sometimes the mistake is actually what I need to do in order to get where I need to go. I'm up here in Pennsylvania because I left my lights on in my car and my battery died. And there was a chain of events that happened from that caused me to eventually be able to come up to work and do the work that I do up here in Pennsylvania. And so, and there used to be a show on PBS years ago called Connections, where they would go back and show a mistake that was made trying to solve this particular problem that ended up turning them on to a whole different thing that was successful and very important, and one would lead to the other. And then because, this person left this, penicillin, I think, that was discovered, by accident, because somebody so-called made a mistake. And so, sometimes these things that we're referring to as mistakes are just things that we do to help us be aware of what's going on for us and what we may need to change. Pain is something that a lot of us avoid, but pain can be good. When my hand is in a fire, pain is good. It tells me to move my hand. So when we learn to identify our emotional pain, it's really, the pain is showing me that my thinking or my behavior is getting off track of coming from the love of what I want, and I'm coming from my fears. And then I need to adjust so that I'm coming from the love of what I want. And so when we see pain that way, it has a different meaning than if we, at all costs, have to ignore it or, pretend it's not there, fight our way through it. You know, whether it's, emotional pain or even physical pain, it's our body, our being trying to communicate something to us. And if we pay attention, then we can readjust our trajectory in life, so to speak. It's like when they went to the moon, they calculate everything mathematically and the thrust, they leave the Earth's gravity. But as they're going there, they have to recalculate, and recalculate, and to change things just a little bit, or maybe change things a lot. Well, it's the same thing in life. We're going to do things, and we need to just step back and recalculate. Okay, thought that was going to work, but it's not. So what can I do to respond differently? And when we have that ability to give ourselves the internal support, and then we get some external support, we're going to be able to get through that process. And the tools that I teach, and my wife and I teach, is tools that help us to have that internal process of support, so that I can be there for me, regardless of what's going on around me. And then that's going to help me to work through things. And if I don't, then I'm going to be challenged by things around me, incidents and traumas, a lot more so, because I don't have the tools to work my way through it.
I agree with you 110%. And I'm sorry if anybody's listening. I'm not trying to sound cliche. I just often agree with John. And I completely agree with his final thoughts on the topic that we're discussing. And I want to throw in my 10 cents, if you will, as we approach or as we give our final thoughts. And, one of my favorite lines ever is from Sylvester Stallone. And I don't know if he coined it, so don't quote me here, but when he won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. First of all, it was long overdue. Anybody who's listening, because I'm a huge Sylvester Stallone fan. But one of the first thing he said, I believe, was he said, "I'm the sum of everyone I've ever met." Right, and I think that goes for not just people we interact with on a daily basis, but also what we read, what we watch. We're taking it all in. So I'm currently reading this book called Creativity Inc., and it is written by, I always screw up his name. I apologize. Ed Catmull, who is the president of Pixar. He's actually responsible for building or starting the process for the technology that Pixar uses today. And the book is about leadership. And I think it's a great book. And one of the things he said that stood out to me, and I used it immediately after I had heard it, was he talked about how when they were filming Toy Story 2, somebody accidentally deleted like all of the content. And they said if they had 30 people working 24 hours a day, they still wouldn't make the deadline. It would take them well over a year to get back to where they were. So when they sat down to put their heads together about what to do, one of the young ladies was out on maternity leave, and she had ended up saving all of the data to her computer at home. So, they figured out a solution for the issue, which could have been a very costly issue in many ways. And then Ed went on to say that they never looked for who accidentally deleted the content, whether it was intentional or an accident. And they just were happy that they found a solution and put, contingency plans in place so that it didn't happen again. So after I listened to that, I was listening to it while I worked out. I go upstairs. I got to get in the shower, get ready for work. We're all rushing out the door. We got the boys. We got Jade. Jade has karate. Monica's there. I said, Jade, can you carry my water for me? Now, for those of you who know that I always have a gallon of water for me. Jade dropped it, and it spilled all over. Now, was that Jade's fault? I mean, she's a toddler. It's a very heavy gallon of water. I took responsibility for it. And, I know Monica was just a little, because, she's in the process of getting the kids ready. But I was like, it's fine. It's fine. Right. And I, I'm not sure I would have reacted that way if I hadn't heard that piece of advice a few minutes prior. And, when I was driving to work, I was thinking about it and I was like, I'm pretty proud of myself that that's how I reacted with that little piece of advice. And then while I was thinking about that, I was thinking how my mother once told me, never let your kids leave on a bad note, right? You don't want to, start yelling at them in the morning if they're late for school. You don't want to start yelling at them if it's really not that big of a deal, because the chances are that we're stressed out as the parent. The kid does something and they're still just a kid. They're learning, they're exploring. And listen, I'm not saying that they're always right. There is that instance where it's like, I told you 10 times, now I need to raise my voice. But the point is that Alexis is a little bit older. Like I said at the beginning, she's had to watch me grow. With my younger children, I'm an experienced father now, and I give my daughter Alexis credit for helping me become an experienced father. And through all the lessons in life, even that little piece of advice that I learned in the book, I'm going to strive to be a better father, a better parent, better teacher, better friend. And that little bit of not losing myself with Jade, maybe she'll remember it, maybe she won't, but I didn't want her to, you know, possibly long term be like, when I was younger, my dad was always yelling at me for stuff like that. So, that's my little final thought for the podcast. I hope people can resonate with it. I don't know if what you have to say about it, John, or if you agree or disagree, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that it's good that you took responsibility for your part. You gave a task to your toddler, and you thought she could handle it, but apparently she couldn't. She dropped it. And if you hadn't asked her to do it, it wasn't like she said, "Daddy, Daddy, let me carry your water." And even if she did, and you gave it to her, and she still dropped it, well, she thought she could handle it, and then she found out that she couldn't. And so when you give that understanding to that child like that, it's going to impact you differently. And it's the same thing with adults. When we give understanding of where people are coming from. And the thing that I like to point out to people is that if somebody is angry with you, they are frightened.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid of losing something or afraid of not getting something. And when I can see that they're a frightened person instead of an angry person, then we can have a different response. We see them differently just by changing that, looking for those primary emotions instead of the secondary emotion of anger. And hurt people. It's because we don't know what to do with our hurt that we then try to hurt who we're blaming for our hurt. And sometimes we're the cause of our own hurt because of how we are seeing ourselves through somebody else's eyes instead of seeing ourselves through our own eyes or taking responsibility for that.
Beautiful. Well, I think that's a good place to start wrapping things up. We had quite a few viewers today. Lots of great input. Marissa, thank you for tuning in. Tony, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for asking the question. Amorn, hope you're well, my friend. Thank you for liking my style. Raymond, yes, parenting is tough. I think John could attest to that. For those of you who don't know, John also has twins. They're a little bit older now, but he has twins as well. So I'm facing some of the challenges that he's already faced. But yes, thank you to everybody for tuning in. And John, why don't you tell people how they can reach out to you?
Yes, well, my twins aren't teenagers yet, so I have that to look forward to.
You got two girls, right? So,
two twin girls and then
yeah.
a third girl that's 3.5 years younger.
So John's in for it. I can attest to that.
Yes. So contact@supportivealliance.com is an email address, and then Supportive Alliance is a website, www.supportive alliance. So that's how we can be reached. And if you want to know more about the tools, I'm also on the Podbean podcast, Checking In with John Anthony, and you can find out about what I do from some of the talks, some of the episodes on that podcast, and I have all that to thank you getting me into the podcast world. It's so much easier when I don't have to reinvent the wheel and learn how to do it and just follow your lead. So I thank you for that, Ryan.
Nope, I'm happy to do it. And I'm happy that you are in for the ride and have been for quite some time. So happy to have John. Always happy to have John. Always happy to get his insight. And again, thank you everybody for listening, watching. We will be cutting this audio recording and posting it on the podcast, so you will be able to listen to it via Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts.
Yeah, I just want to share this.
Yeah.
You're saying, we've been doing it for a while. It's last fall is when we started, and I remember when I was talking to, I was in I guess I call it a nightclub, talking to one of the people in the band, and it was a young band, um, and um, and I said, "Yeah, so how long have you been playing?" Oh, really long time, a year.
It's ages in their mind.
Yeah, and it's like it's all relative. It's all relative, and what's long to one person, it's not so long, depending on how long you've been on this planet.
Nope, I completely agree. I do. Sometimes, then this year would be a perfect example of some time spans feeling longer than others. But yes, everybody who listened, thank you very much. I think this is going to be the new platform for how we do things. I'm enjoying it. Richard and I did it last night. We'll be cutting that audio as well. So that's the Ryan Mercer Show with Richard Masso. And yeah, so thanks for everybody tuning in. John, thank you for joining us. We'll see everybody next time now that you can see us.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.